Mythical Revival, I Can Enter the Apocalyptic Flood. Introduction. In 2036, global spiritual energy will revive, and ancient mythological relics will be revealed. At this point, people realize that many historical relics that were originally thought to be unofficial history, legends, ancient people fabricated, etc. were actually true. Qingchengdao Palace, Buddhist Ancestral Temple, Qin King Mausoleum 100 Schools of Thought, Pre-Qin Alchemists, Late Han Scholars, Heroes of the Three Kingdoms Zhuge Liang's 7-star lamp. Continuation of life is not a fabrication, there are indeed 12 golden men hidden in the mausoleum of the first emperor. The secret techniques of summoning wind and rain, moving mountains and filling the sea are all real, and even the ancient myths of Nuwa creating humans and Pangu opening the sky may be true. Chen Jin, who had traveled through this world, found himself able to enter the wasteland. The legendary origin of all things. Just Chen Jin looked at the dense sun above his head, the exposed rocks under his feet, and the dry brown soil on the earth, with a bewildered expression on his face. This vast wilderness, why is it a bit different from what I imagined? Chapter 1. Flood and Wilderness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wow. The young man poured the clear water in his hand onto his face and looked at his green face in the mirror, feeling a bit dazed. There's such a thing as time travel. Based on the memory in his mind, Chen Jin realized that he had come to another world. The technology and culture here are exactly the same as those of Blue Star, but in 2036, a sudden spiritual revival ushered in an era of evolution worldwide. Now, it is 2167 years. The revival of spiritual energy has led to the emergence of a large number of strong warriors in the human world. A cultivation method called Zhenwu has been invented, and powerful warriors can fly to heaven and earth, move mountains and seas. At the same time, the development of technology has not fallen behind, and instead, based on the study of spiritual energy, a new round of technological explosion has been initiated. The combination of warriors and technology has once again enabled humans to stand out in the war of evolution. To this day, although the wilderness is still inhabited by a large number of terrifying evolutionary creatures, and the ocean is the domain of monsters, humans are still the masters of this planet, and even have begun to develop and migrate to cities on the Moon and Mars. It's okay. Even if I can't become a warrior in this stable society, relying on my 2 life experiences, I don't think I'll do too poorly. Chen Jin thought to himself. After entering high school, Chinese citizens will begin to be exposed to martial arts. Throughout the first semester of high school, it is compulsory to teach martial arts. Those with excellent martial arts qualifications can enter martial arts classes and enjoy further national martial arts training. Those who cannot enter the martial arts class can only go to the martial arts school to self-pay for martial arts practice. My original martial arts qualifications are mediocre, but my academic performance is quite good. If I continue to develop step by step, I will definitely not be able to enter the martial arts class. My family is just an ordinary family. Without the help of the government, it is difficult to afford the huge cost of practicing martial arts. Although there are many other ways to become a warrior, extraordinary power is right in front of us. Who would be willing to give up? As for the issue of mediocre qualifications and lack of resources, Chen Jin sat cross-legged on the bed, his eyes closed and focused. Soon, he sensed that a bronze ancient mirror was quietly floating in his sea of consciousness. He also has the standard gold finger for the traveler. The ancient dictionary is engraved with complex patterns, and many vivid exotic beasts hover over it, constantly changing. At first glance, it seems that all things in heaven and earth are included. After a period of time, the ancient dictionary will spit out a gray chaotic aura surrounding its body. Chen Jin has a premonition that when this chaotic aura increases, the ancient dictionary will be activated and its true power will be displayed. I don't know what my golden finger would be. Chen Jin, who has read many online novels, has already begun to secretly fantasize. Add more points. Sign in. A clone. Or is it fusion refining? Or is it accelerating the growth of spiritual grass? In terms of potential, it should be better to add some points. The simple and unadorned golden finger is the strongest golden finger. However, if Chen Jinxian really wants to choose, then he still needs to sign in. No one can resist the temptation of free prostitution. Just as Chen Jin was immersed in his fantasy, the ancient book in the sea suddenly moved, and a strand of chaotic energy was expelled, as if reaching a certain threshold. All the chaotic energy surrounding the ancient book suddenly surged towards the ancient book. Chen Jin was overjoyed and finally arrived. In the next moment, the spiritual light of Gu Jian burst forth, and Chen Jin felt that all his feelings were filled with that spiritual light. In front of him was a vast expanse of white, and his mind was spinning wildly. After the spiritual light dissipated, he was no longer in his cozy little room. The world is a vast expanse of white, as if the whole world is surrounded by intense incandescence. Looking down, one can see the hard reddish-brown rocks, with no signs of life around, only layers of giant rocks. The strong wind carried gravel and hit his face, blocked by a thin layer of protective green light, making a loud sound. Silent and desolate, but bright, even too bright, this was Chen Jin's first impression. What the hell is this place? Is the function of that ancient dictionary to teleport me to another world? Can I still go back? A sudden fear rose in Chen Jin's heart, and he never expected that Gu Jian would undergo such a change after being activated. Forcing himself to calm down, Chen Jin tried to look around under the strong light, but there was nothing else in sight except for the rocks. At this moment, Chen Jin suddenly noticed something and squinted towards the sky under the strong light. Above him, the dense sun covered the entire sky. Looking around, there were at least dozens of golden fireballs, each releasing its own light and heat to the fullest. Chen Jin stared blankly. This must not be a blue star anymore, so the ancient dictionary threw me directly onto a desolate planet. In an instant, immense fear filled his soul. At this moment, without giving him more time to think, a clear, sizzling sound interrupted his thoughts. He just realized that the thin layer of protective green light on his body was rapidly fading under the high temperature. Suddenly, as if reaching a certain limit, the green light on his body made a light bang sound and shattered directly. In an instant, the intense light filled the entire sky, and the already dazzling white light increased by hundreds or even thousands of times. Chen Jin let out a scream, closed his eyes, and bitter tears flowed from his eyes. Before I had a chance to react, there was another sharp pain on my skin, and the next moment the pain quickly spread to my whole body. His skin carbonized at a visible rate to the naked eye, revealing the bright red flesh beneath him at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. However, those flesh also burned at the moment of exposure, and his hair was ignited by the flames. Chen Jin screamed in agony, quickly turning into charcoal. Pu Tong. With a muffled sound, Chen Jin's body fell to the ground, scattered into countless pitch-black charcoal blocks. His organs and intestines flowed out and continued to burn on the dry ground. Ah! Chen Jin screamed in agony as he stepped back and collided with the white wall in the bedroom. The sense of impact coming from behind made him come to his senses, staring blankly at his panting face and naked body in the mirror. Not far in front of him, there were scattered clothes on the ground. Chen Jin touched his face in disbelief. Without any harm, the pain of being burned by the flames just now seemed like an illusion. He stood in place for a long time before finally coming to his senses and picking up the clothes on the ground to put on. The feeling of being burned all over, although clear, was like in a dream, without the imagined pain. It doesn't seem like something that actually happened, but rather an illusion conveyed to him by the ancient dictionary, similar to a death simulation. But even so, he didn't want to experience that taste again. At this moment, Chen Jin's mind was full of doubts. What was the role of the ancient dictionary, whether the world he had just experienced was true or false, and if so, where was it? Just as he was confused, a divine message was transmitted from the ancient dictionary to his consciousness and transformed into a form that he could understand. Current anchored world. The Great Wilderness World, establishing a teleportation channel, consumes 30 energy points, detected fatal strike, channel closed, survival time this time. 0.3 seconds. Chapter 2. Mythical Era. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The information in his mind left Qingchengdao stunned on the spot. Is the flood and wasteland the one in my memory? Is the flood and wasteland not a myth, but a real existence? Wait, by the way, it seems that the original owner's memory already contains descriptions of the flood and famine. Qingchengdao only felt an electric current rushing straight from his back towards the heavenly spirit, making him stand up with excitement. In the original owner's memory, after the revival of spiritual energy, many ancient relics that did not exist before gradually appeared in this world, such as Lingshan, Daogong, and ancient tombs. The information obtained from it has shaken the entire archaeological community. People are beginning to realize that ancient myths and legends are likely to be true. After decades of sorting and proofreading, people have reclassified historical eras. The Yuan, Ming, Qing, and Republic of China were known as the Zhuge era. The diamond mage of the Yuan dynasty was able to lift 1,000 caddies of yellow cattle, while the Zhou mad immortal of the Ming dynasty was able to navigate through the flames unscathed and predict good or bad. Even Zhu Yuanzhang relied heavily on him. The imperial palace guards of the Qing dynasty were able to jump up 2 or 3 meters high in one fell swoop, making modern high jump champions difficult to match. But in the Republic of China, even the great masters of martial arts were no match for the long spears and cannons of foreigners. Afterwards, they became increasingly declining and even became tools for fraudsters to accumulate wealth. At this stage, the extraordinary people and scholars can still be seen in the Yuan and Ming dynasties, and in the Qing and Republican dynasties, they could at most be considered slightly stronger humans. The further Tang and Song dynasties were known as the Last Law era. Although known as the End Method, the actual spiritual pulse still exists. In those deep mountain spiritual lands, one can still glimpse the figures of cultivators, and there are also cultivators such as Yuan Tiangang and Zhang Daoling whose cultivation is comparable to that of their predecessors. Especially during the prosperous Tang dynasty, when Buddhism took over, Taoism and Buddhism clashed, countless celestial beings emerged, and their cultivation was not inferior to its predecessor. Unfortunately, its duration was only a short 100 years, which later generations referred to as the final glory of the end of the Dharma era. Afterwards, setting aside the chaotic period of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, from the spring and autumn period and the warring states period to the 3 kingdoms period at the end of the Han dynasty, it was known as the Middle Ages. This was a golden and brilliant era with many talented individuals. 100 schools of thought, pre-Qin alchemists, late Han scholars, heroes of the 3 kingdoms. Countless mysterious and complex cultivation methods have been created, and countless mysterious and magnificent techniques have been created. This is a great era of competition among hundreds of boats. Moving forward, there are Xia, Shang, and Zhou, which are known as the ancient times, while the period of the 3 emperors and 5 emperors is known as the ancient times. It is said that before the 3 emperors and 5 emperors, there was an even longer mythological era. However, the records of this era are too vague, and historians are still debating whether it really existed. Every legend about the mythological era cannot be separated from a single word. That's the flood and wilderness. Wilderness, the birthplace of all things. If the place where the mysterious ancient book was sent to Qingchengdao is truly a wasteland, can it prove that the mythological era is not a fantasy passed down by word of mouth, but a true existence? Thinking of this, Qingchengdao's heart couldn't help but jump with a thud. If his guess was true, then the function of his own golden finger would be incredible. You should know that after the revival of spiritual energy, the extraordinary traces of the past gradually appear, and the older the era, the fewer traces appear, but the better the treasures hidden in it. This does not mean that human wisdom is regressing, but with the decline of spiritual energy, it is difficult for future generations to stand at the height of their predecessors and can only create the optimal solution that is in line with the current era. At present, the vast majority of cultivation methods circulating in the Chinese market come from the two eras of Zhuge Fa and Mofa. The secret techniques of the Middle Ages, even a small one, can attract countless forces to compete. The fundamental methods that can be practiced are even more valuable and cannot be measured by money. Every door is firmly held in the hands of the country and top powers. As for the ruins of ancient times, only two have been discovered to this day, the ancient and mythological eras, which no one has ever touched. But now, Qingchengdao can directly enter the wilderness, crossing the ancient times that no one has ever discovered, and directly touching the origin of the mythological era. It can be imagined that this will be such a huge treasure. I estimate that even if you pick up a stone randomly, it will be a priceless treasure in modern times. How can he not get excited about this? But soon, after the initial excitement, Qingchengdao, who had calmed down, began to have doubts again. That's not right either. Even if the wilderness really exists, how could it be that kind of ghost place? In legend, isn't that a supreme world full of spiritual power, abundant natural resources and treasures, and immortal birds, dragons, and phoenixes flying all over the sky? And where did he teleport to? There are only countless suns and stones, dry and silent, without any vitality. Can this be a flood and famine? Even if there is a gap with the legend, it shouldn't be so desolate, right? Qingchengdao's mentality gradually transitioned from initial ecstasy to doubt. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to calm down and began to ponder the matter carefully. Firstly, these messages were directly transformed into a form that Qingchengdao could understand and appeared in his mind, so there is no possibility of ambiguity. That is to say, at least in the mysterious ancient dictionary in his mind, the place where Qingchengdao traveled was the mythological wasteland in his impression. That place where all things originated. So, why did the wasteland become so desolate? Did I happen to teleport into some ominous secret realm, or did some kind of huge change occur in the wasteland, or did the wasteland itself be like this? The so-called prosperous spiritual land is just a fiction created by the novelist. Qingchengdao thought for a long time, but didn't come up with a reason. He contacted Jin Zhuge to urge Gu Jian again and obtain more information. For Qingchengdao's doubts, Gu Jian naturally does not have that intelligent answer, it seems to be just a tool-like dead object. But from the feedback from Gu Jian, Qingchengdao still received two pieces of information. Firstly, each teleportation consumes a certain amount of energy, and the stronger one's own strength, the more energy is consumed. The energy will automatically replenish a little every day, and there are still 70 points stored in the ancient dictionary. Currently, only 30 points are needed to teleport oneself. Secondly, the endpoint of the teleportation will change with the teleporter's position in the wilderness. Simply put, wherever Qingchengdao dies, the next teleportation will take place. These messages are of no help to Qingchengdao's understanding of that unfamiliar world. But what can be certain is, his golden finger is broken. Just kidding, regardless of the situation, he always teleports to the same place, which means he will be burned to ashes every time after 0.3 seconds. This still has some hair to use. Even if he climbed over that mountain and found all the rare treasures on the ground, he wouldn't have the fate to go and get them. Apart from enduring pain for nothing, it brings no benefits. I thought I was the chosen child and the protagonist in the novel, but now it seems like it's just a joke of fate. Are you fucking playing with me? Qingchengdao was cursing profusely. He could confirm that Gu Jian was an extremely miraculous treasure, but it was of no help to him at this stage. It was like countless treasures were right in front of him, but he was a useless person with disabled hands, unable to even grab a touch of gold powder. The huge gap made it difficult for him to accept for a moment. After thinking in place for a long time, Qingchengdao let out a light sigh and shook his head to stop thinking. He accepted reality calmly and based on it, reconsidered his future. There is no resentment towards others, that is not Chen Jin's style. Even if he wants to live his life like an ordinary person in his previous life, he must strive to live his own wonderful life. There are still 2 months left until the end of this semester. If you put in a fight, you may not have the opportunity to enter the martial arts class. As for Gu Jian, based on the current situation, continuing to entangle is just a waste of energy, so let's put it aside for now. Chen Jin adjusted his mentality, no longer relying on his golden fingers, and began to rely on himself, racing against time to cultivate. Everyone only got to know martial arts when they entered high school, but throughout the first semester of their first year of high school, they didn't teach true martial arts, and instead were taught the 9 great stake skills. Zhuan Gong can enhance qi and blood, only when qi and blood meet the standard can one cultivate true martial arts. Chen Jin's legs slightly bent, his core tightened, and he put on a posture of a mixed element pile. This is a Taoist secret pile skill that can regulate breathing and nourish the mind. The round pile of Xingyi fist evolved from this. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Not long after standing, Chen Jin felt a warm sensation rising from the soles of his feet and pouring into his limbs, feeling very comfortable. However, at the same time, his lower back muscles began to ache and his joints also felt uncomfortable. The strangest thing is that Chen Jin can feel as if there are more than a dozen ants crawling along the meridians in his body, especially itching, and this itching sensation is still increasing. Chen Jin knows that this is spiritual energy improving his body. 3 minutes later, Chen Jin's body had reached its limit, and he finally stopped panting heavily. This can reflect the gap in qualifications. The longer the standing time, the stronger the ability to attract spiritual energy, and the better the effect on improving the body. But ordinary people can't stand standing for about 10 minutes, while some innate geniuses with all their meridians can stand for 2 to 3 hours as if nothing has happened, and the speed of cultivation is naturally vastly different. Chen Jin stood at the stake for 19 minutes this time. Considering that he has been studying the mixed element stake for 3 months, this result can only be considered average. But faced with such an ordinary result, he let out a faint sigh and looked at the timed watch, his eyes showing surprise. Strange, when I was practicing yesterday, I could only persist for 16 minutes, but why did I increase by 3 minutes in just one night? I only increased by 2.5 points after a month of hard work in the past. What's the situation? I haven't had any chance this day. Suddenly, Chen Jin's body stiffened, and a bold idea appeared in his mind. This idea is too incredible for him to believe at all. Can it be said that staying in the wilderness for only 0.3 seconds has already improved my qualifications? Chapter 3. Transferring items. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 0.3 seconds is the maximum reaction time for the vast majority of people. For ordinary people, when their eyes see an enemy's exposed head, they transmit a signal to their brain, which then responds. By clicking with their fingers for 0.3 seconds, it has already passed. Does such a short stay elevate his qualifications to a certain extent? Even for that legendary mythological land, it's a bit exaggerated. Besides, Chen Jin thought of the scene of the apocalyptic wasteland, and no matter how it looked, it didn't seem like a treasure trove that could improve people's physical fitness. But currently, it seems that there is only one possibility left. It's also very easy to verify the method, that's to go again. Now I have 70 energy points, and teleportation only requires 30 points. It's completely enough. However, it's not easy to accumulate energy points, and you can't just teleport it again without thinking, it's a waste. His mind was filled with flames, as well as giant rocks that had been sun-dried and cracked, and even emitted white smoke. To survive in that environment, the first thing is to have the ability to withstand high temperatures. It's not realistic to rely solely on my body to resist that kind of temperature. Don't even talk about me, even a successful martial artist may not be able to hold on naked for long. However, it would be different if we could use external objects. Modern insulation suits and fire-resistant suits can withstand temperatures of thousands of degrees without any problem. If the ancient dictionary in my mind can teleport me, can it also teleport other objects? Chen Jin's mind was running rapidly, thinking about various feasible methods. Previously, he chose to mess things up because even if he racked his brains to survive in the wilderness, there was still a long way to go before he could have a chance. Simply put, it means investing heavily but seeing no return. But now, after realizing that staying in the wilderness could potentially improve his physical condition, Chen Jin immediately became interested in his own golden finger. He sat on the bed, began to concentrate on communicating with the golden fingers in his mind, and like before, began to use the ancient dictionary to establish a teleportation channel. But this time, what he wants to teleport is not himself, but other objects. This feeling is wonderful, as long as Chen Jin has this idea, there will be a mysterious consciousness guiding him, allowing him to naturally learn to use the power of ancient books. It's a bit like a state of mind-to-heart communication and sudden realization. Chen Jin didn't deliberately think and ponder, just followed his instincts and learned the method of activating ancient classics. And the result also surprised him. Gujian can indeed teleport objects. However, teleportation requires the consumption of energy points. That's also why he was transported naked to the wilderness before, because anything that wants to be teleported requires energy consumption. As long as Chen Jin focuses his mind on the item to be teleported, the ancient dictionary will transmit information that requires corresponding energy points. For example, the vase in Chen Jin's room doesn't even require half an energy point for teleportation. It takes 4 points to switch to a bed, while his dog at home requires an astonishing 18 points. Gradually, Chen Jin also discovered a pattern. Generally speaking, the larger the volume and mass of an item, the higher the cost of teleportation. Under the same volume and mass, conscious living creatures and items containing spiritual power will significantly increase the cost of teleportation. Having obtained accurate information, Chen Jin finally discovered a way to stay longer in the wilderness. Excitedly, he opened his computer and began searching for information related to fire and thermal insulation clothing on the internet. And the results are also diverse. Cheap ones can be bought for 200 to 300, expensive ones can easily cost 4,000 to 5,000, and there are even fire-resistant clothing that uses spiritual materials and is specifically designed for flame-throwing monsters. It is introduced that it can withstand high temperatures of 4,000 degrees in a short time, and of course, the price is as high as millions of Chinese coins. In a world of chaos, I only need to deal with solar radiation and the temperature is relatively constant, so I don't need to buy fire-resistant clothing. Basic insulation clothing is sufficient. These only require 100 or 200 thermal insulation suits. The merchant claims to be able to withstand temperatures of up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, but it is estimated that they can withstand temperatures of up to 10 seconds at high temperatures. Chen Jin picked and chose a set of 800 yuan thermal insulation suits. This is a thickened version with testing reports attached. Moreover, according to his inquiry, the seller specializes in producing fire-fighting equipment and has cooperated with several fire departments in different cities. The online reputation is also good, and the quality should be guaranteed. But the specific details need to be tried before we can know. Now Chen Jin only has around 2,000 yuan all over his body, including his monthly living expenses. However, thinking of the huge benefits he may gain, he gritted his teeth and clicked the order button. At the same time, he also bought a pair of insulated and thickened hard-soled shoes, because the temperature of rocks is definitely higher than that of air, and ordinary shoes are afraid to be burned through soon. The merchant is in the same city as him, and as long as the other party issues the order quickly, it can be delivered tomorrow. However, Chen Jin couldn't wait anymore. He searched the map and found that the merchant was not far away, so he chose to pick up the goods himself. "Brother, we're going to eat soon. Where are you going?" At the door, a long-haired girl wearing a middle school uniform looked at Qingchengdao wearing shoes in confusion. "Go to school and get something, I'll be right back," Qingchengdao said, and hurriedly ran out of the door. Chen Wei looked at Qingchengdao's back, her beautiful willow eyebrows furrowed slightly, and a hint of vigilance flashed in her eyes. "Is this person dating?" However, Qingchengdao, who returned in just 10 minutes, dispelled Chen Wei's doubts. "What did you buy?" Chen Wei stared with big eyes and looked at Qingchengdao, who was holding a half-person tall box, looking for a pair of bright black eyes at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Her doubts were even greater. In her impression, her older brother was very frugal and never shopped recklessly. "Be careful." Qingchengdao casually responded and couldn't wait to rush into the bedroom holding the box. Then there was only a click, and the door was locked. Chen Wei's eyes widened even wider. This guy's still locking the door. Without hesitation, she turned around and shouted loudly into the kitchen. "Mom! Brother has something to hide from us." Through the door, Qingchengdao also heard Chen Wei's shout. But he didn't care at all. "This little girl has this bouncy personality, and my mother won't be around to play around with her." Without further thought, Qingchengdao quickly opened the packaging box and, following the instructions he had received from the merchant before, quickly finished wearing it. He focused his thoughts, communicated with the ancient dictionary, and quickly received a response. Current required energy for transmission. 32 points, fortunately, only 2 energy points are needed, and Qingchengdao can fully afford it. Just in case the insulation suit doesn't work, he will have to experience the taste of being burned into coke again. Although the pain and suffocation are much weaker than reality, he doesn't want to experience it again. Damn it, a man with a big heart, so scared of grinding and chattering. I can't even bear this hardship, and I have to learn some damn martial arts. Qingchengdao cursed softly, doing a good job of psychological construction for himself. Taking a deep breath, he didn't hesitate anymore and directly activated Gujian. Detected pre-stored coordinates. Honghuang World. Transfer initiated. The next moment, a flower in front of Qingchengdao once again arrived in the wilderness. Chapter 4. Gravity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The fireball is still burning in the sky, and the whole world is surrounded by incandescence, with hard rocks at its feet. Qingchengdao returned to this world, with the unchanging wasteland before him. ZZ. The green light on his body began to fade away. With the last experience, Qingchengdao knew that when the green light disappeared, he would completely integrate into the world. He quickly surrounded himself, hoping to find a cooler place, but unfortunately, the scorching sun filled every corner without leaving any shadow. Qingchengdao took a deep breath, but was not panicked. He carefully tidied up his insulation suit, ensuring that every inch of his body was protected, and then waited quietly for the green light to dissipate. Zila. A faint sound fell into Qingchengdao's ear, making his heart skip a beat. Here we go. Even though he had already completed psychological construction in advance, he couldn't help feeling a bit nervous at this moment. The next moment, just like before, the thin green light on his body quietly shattered like cicada wings. In an instant, Qingchengdao felt as if he had been stuffed into a steamer, and the air suddenly tightened and heated to an unbearable degree. The hot airflow poured in from his nose, as if steam was burning his throat. Qingchengdao let out a soft snort. Fortunately, although it was painful, it had not yet reached a fatal level. However, at this moment, his face suddenly turned red and his leg muscles erupted. Strips of blue veins appeared at his neck, his spine curved, as if suddenly burdened with 1,000 pounds. In less than half a second of integrating into this world, Qingchengdao realized another problem. Gravity. The gravity of this world is much greater than that of a blue star. At this moment, Qingchengdao felt like he was carrying a 200-kilogram barbell. His muscles were exerting force all over his body, and he was so angry that he collapsed into his chest. Chen Jin's face had already turned red, but he dared not breathe at all. As long as he relaxed a little, his whole body would be crushed by gravity and fall directly onto the hard rock with tremendous acceleration. Even worse, the surrounding temperature is still rising, and the narrow insulation suit seems to have turned into a furnace. His heart was beating wildly, trying his best to pump blood into his brain, but under the influence of gravity, the originally smooth blood weighed like 1,000 pounds. His lungs were about to explode, and Chen Jin's face was swollen like a balloon. The strong gravity made it impossible for him to breathe. He wanted to lie on the rock, trying to disperse some of the pressure of gravity, but his vision became increasingly blurred. At the last moment of losing consciousness, through the insulation mask, he only saw the white insulation suit on his body, like a tin foil, slowly curling and tightening like a bug burning in flames. Bang! Chen Jin's body fell heavily, and his sitting bone collided with the hard rock, directly shattered by the tremendous impact force. His ribs turned into sharp sickles, deeply cutting into his internal organs. Detected fatal strike, channel closed, survival time this time is 3.8 seconds, ha. At the next moment, Chen Jin sat up from the bed, panting heavily. He stroked his forehead with his hand, his mind blank, and the bedroom chandelier appeared in a double shadow in front of him. The entire bedroom seemed to be spinning around him, and a wave of dizziness swept over him. After staying in place for a long time, he finally regained his energy. I didn't expect that besides temperature, that world was just a basic gravity that could take my life. Sitting on the bed, Chen Jin burst into a bitter smile. The feeling of being ignited all over his body during the last teleportation was too terrifying. The intense pain occupied all his nerves, so he didn't even notice the change in gravity. If it weren't for these death feelings, which were all simulated by Gu Jian, Chen Jin felt that he might just faint from the pain. But I fainted before I died this time, so it wasn't that painful, Chen Jin chuckled to himself. Now in his mind, there is only an impression of his own fractured ischium, fractured lumbar spine, and shattered internal organs, but there is no specific feeling that matches it. Shaking his head, Chen Jin shook off his chaotic thoughts and focused his attention on the information transmitted from the ancient dictionary. Survival time this time. 3.8 seconds, although it's still very short, there has been a significant improvement compared to the last 0.3 seconds. Thinking of this, Chen Jin's heart became excited again. If his speculation is correct, the last time it was just 0.3 seconds that brought huge changes to his body. What would happen this time? It was 3.8 seconds. He wanted to practice the stake technique to see the effect, but as soon as he got up, his eyes lit up. Does one's body seem to have become lighter? He moved his arms, lifted his legs, and then bent down to do push-ups. After getting up, his eyes lit up even more. It's not his illusion, his body has really become lighter. It shouldn't be that I lost weight, but that my muscle strength has increased. In the past, my limit for push-ups was around 40, but just now I did 50 in one breath and felt like there was still room for improvement. Sure enough, my speculation is correct. In the world of chaos, even if I don't move anything, just lying down can improve my physique. Chen Jin is not sure how much improvement has been made. He needs to go to school or martial arts school and use specialized measuring instruments. But what can be certain is that this improvement is absolutely unimaginable to humans of this era. A mere 3.8 seconds of pause can already cause significant changes in his physique. What if it were for a minute, an hour, or even a day? This effect is even better than a spiritual medicine worth millions of dollars. My qualifications are mediocre. If I want to achieve success in martial arts and master extraordinary power, I must not miss this opportunity. Chen Jin thought to himself, taking a deep breath, calming his excitement, and starting to think about specific plans. I still have 38 energy points left. I need to find the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com to support another teleportation, but I cannot use it recklessly and waste the opportunity. I need to plan and prepare thoroughly before using it. We must find ways to extend our survival time in that world. But I'm afraid it's very difficult. The difficulty of survival in the vast world is simply too great. The high temperature can be barely solved by using insulation suits. Although the material of the insulation suit has changed with the naked eye in just a few seconds, it should not be a problem to hold it for an additional few tens of seconds. It's really not possible. He can still upgrade to equipment with better heat resistance. The trouble is gravity. Qingchengdao recalled his recent encounter and estimated that the gravity of the vast world should be 3 to 5 times that of a blue star. Human bones are extremely hard and theoretically capable of withstanding 90 times the force of gravity. Even considering the body structure of the skeleton, it can support 30 times the force of gravity. However, human muscles are far from being able to maintain such a large weight, and being able to lift a barbell 5 times their own weight is already at the level of a top-strength athlete. What's even more frustrating is that high-gravity environments and the pressure of barbells are quite different. Supporting a barbell requires a stable core and maintaining a huge intra-abdominal pressure, and the influence of gravity on various parts of the human body is uniform, even when sitting or lying down. Although the difficulty seems to have decreased significantly, there are actually other huge troubles, such as the difficulty of transporting blood to the brain under the influence of gravity, which can easily cause hypoxia and coma, such as immense pressure on the heart and lungs, making it difficult to breathe, and so on. The more Qingchengdao thinks, the bigger his head becomes. Is there any equipment in this world that helps resist gravity? Qingchengdao opened his computer and began searching online. Chapter 5. Fireproof Coffin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In front of the computer desk, Qingchengdao stared at the screen with a thoughtful expression on his face. The high-gravity environment of the wasteland world is quite similar to the state of fighter pilots accelerating. Ordinary people can only withstand an acceleration of up to 5g, while well-trained pilots can withstand 7 to 8g. Even ace pilots can withstand an acceleration of 12g in an instant and remain alert. But the problem is that the acceleration and climb of fighter jets are instantaneous, and high-gravity conditions may only last for a short 1 or 2 seconds, or even a few tenths of a second. In the world of chaos, Qingchengdao has to constantly bear the immense gravity. In this situation, the pressure on various bodily functions is unimaginable. In previous lifetimes, manned space shuttles typically controlled the peak acceleration within 4g, but even so, astronauts had to undergo extremely rigorous physical examinations and training to withstand it briefly. For ordinary people, 3 to 4 times the gravity is deadly. I only persisted for less than 4 seconds before fainting. Even with the added pressure, I could hold on for at most 2 or 3 more seconds. Thinking of this, Qingchengdao couldn't help but feel a bit dizzy. He started searching online for ways to resist gravity, and in the end, he came up with a bunch of fantastic ideas that were very impressive but not very useful. For example, in a science fiction novel, a crew member is immersed in a liquid with a density similar to that of the human body, allowing the gas inside to be emptied and replaced with a liquid to adapt to the acceleration of interstellar navigation. For example, using centrifuges, electromagnetic fields, and other means to establish a reverse field, providing reverse force, can also offset some of the influence of gravity. But even if these ideas remain in the fantasy stage, there are many areas that need improvement, let alone practical applications. Using extraordinary power is a way of thinking, but the related spiritual tools often cost tens of millions or even billions. Moreover, even if given to Qingchengdao, he wouldn't use them. Qingchengdao looked up the information and found that his head was going bald, so he finally found 2 feasible solutions. The first method is to wear specialized anti-G clothing. This type of clothing can promote blood flow and prevent brain hypoxia and coma in high acceleration by applying pressure to the human body, which is usually worn by fighter pilots. However, even though anti-G suits are expensive and have extremely high technological content, their effectiveness is mediocre. A person who can resist 5G may also bear an additional 1G when wearing anti-G clothing, and may faint when it reaches 7G. The second method is much more effective, which is adjusting posture. Standing people, even professional pilots, can withstand acceleration of 3 or 4G without hesitation, but if lying on their back, their endurance can double without any problem. Sure enough, sometimes the more simple and unadorned the plan, the better the effect. Astronauts in their past lives used a supine position when taking off on a space shuttle. Qingcheng thought of the science popularization magazines he had read before. So that's easy. I just need to find a bed that can withstand high temperatures and heavy pressure and teleport it over, then lie on it, which can greatly prolong my stay in the wilderness. Qingcheng has a train of thought. However, that alone is not enough, because the rocks on the land are rugged and uneven, making it difficult to lay the bed flat. Therefore, it is better to make it into a cradle shaped similar to a wooden boat, and add a soft cushion inside, so that I can lie comfortably inside. Since we have all achieved this step, why not add an extra layer of insulation pad in the cradle, and seal the top as well? This is equivalent to adding an extra layer of insulation structure, further strengthening my ability to withstand high temperatures. Qingcheng's eyes gradually lit up, and the corner of his mouth lifted proudly. He felt that this was a genius idea, which could keep his body in a supine position to resist gravity and block the damage of sunlight. But suddenly, he thought of something and his smile froze. Wait, isn't this a damn fireproof coffin? The smile on Qingcheng's face turned into a bitter smile, and when others were lying flat, they were just talking, but he was really lying flat. Quickly advance to the final step of life. However, if we can really help him survive in the world of famine, let alone let him lie in the coffin, just bury him directly. Alright, we have the plan now, and that's the last step left. Make money. Not to mention that buying a new set of thermal insulation suits will consume Qingcheng's remaining savings. The cost of the coffin is even greater than a few thousand and cannot be taken down. After all, ordinary coffins cannot withstand high temperatures, so Qingcheng must customize them specifically, which will greatly increase the cost. As a student, the quickest and most direct way to get money is naturally to ask your parents for it. Brother, we're out for dinner. At this moment, a crisp shout interrupted Qingcheng's thoughts. He opened the door and coincidentally bumped into a pair of ancient and mischievous big eyes. Brother, my mother cooked braised pork belly today. It's delicious. Come out and eat it quickly. Chen Wei playfully smiled as she spoke, while secretly glancing into Qingcheng's room with the corner of her eye. Qingcheng was speechless for a moment. Why is this little girl so curious? Without even thinking about it, he raised his hand and slapped the little girl on the forehead, with smooth and natural movements, as if it had become a muscle memory. What are you sneaking around looking at? Let's go eat. Ah! You dare to hit me. Qingcheng didn't exert any force at all, but Chen Wei made an exaggerated expression of pain and, under the cover of her exaggerated performance, quietly swung her fists and attacked Qingcheng's ribs. However, how could this little trick deceive Qingcheng? A dragon claw accurately grabbed the latter's wrist. Chen Wei, who was discovered, no longer concealed herself. She spread her teeth and claws, and rushed towards Qingcheng with both hands and feet. Then, she was easily suppressed by the latter's standard capture, unable to move and only a small mouth was still shouting. To be honest, Chen Wei is also inspirational. For so many years, she has been beaten up by Qingcheng from childhood to adulthood, but she has no intention of giving in. It can be said that she has been defeated and defeated repeatedly. Finally, Chen Wei used her martial arts skills to pretend to be miserable, shouting pain loudly. With a slight release of her strength, Qingcheng skillfully broke free from her constraints like a swimming fish and ran towards the living room, wailing as she ran, "Mom! Qingcheng is bullying me again." During the process of moving the rescue troops, he didn't forget to turn his head and glare fiercely at Qingcheng. However, for Chen Wei, who looked aggrieved. Chen's father and mother in the living room had no reaction and had long been accustomed to it. Chen's mother smiled and said, "You're so big, you're still making such a fuss. Hurry up and eat, the dishes are getting cold." Seeing no one looking at her, the little girl sat in her seat with a gloomy expression on her face. When Chen Jin also arrived, she secretly kicked him under the table. Chen Jin found it quite amusing and no longer argued with the little girl. Instead, he ate the food while observing his parents for a lifetime. Father Chen Fangua, Mother Li Ping. Chen's mother is a standard traditional woman, hard-working, gentle and virtuous. She usually does a lot of rough work, and her skin is a bit rough. Her arms are not as delicate as those of a well-maintained young woman, but rather thick and strong. When she looks at Chen Jin and Chen Wei, her face is always smiling. Chen's father, on the other hand, appeared somewhat serious. He was not particularly tall, but his body was very sturdy. He was usually meticulous in his speech and laughter, as if he wanted to show off the dignity of a family head in front of his children. Both of them work in the same factory. Chen's father is a mediocre warrior who serves as the captain of the security team, while Chen's mother is the accountant in the factory. Chen Jin's parents have worked diligently for the factory for nearly 20 years, and their salary is not low, with a combined monthly salary of over 15,000 yuan. Just 2 children in the family, food, shelter, and transportation, which one is free. Therefore, the Chen Jin family cannot be said to be in financial straits, but it is definitely not considered wealthy. I am also very sensible and have hardly ever asked my parents for money since I was young. I am also very frugal on weekdays, and those 2,000 yuan in private money was saved from my monthly living expenses of 600 yuan during my 3 years in junior high school. Therefore, Chen Jin didn't know how to ask his parents for money at the moment. After all, the money he needed was not a small amount. He was struggling with what excuse to use, but unexpectedly, Chen's father spoke up first. "Ah Jin, your homeroom teacher called me this morning. Your mid-term test this time. Your martial arts score doesn't seem to be ideal." Chapter 6. I want to learn martial arts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Fengwa's words made Chen Jin's heart slightly skip a beat. His performance this time is not really good, it can even be said to be a bit poor. Every first-year high school student will be taught the 9 great stake techniques to strengthen their qi and blood. As long as the qi and blood quantification value reaches 2.0 before the end of the semester, you can enter the martial arts class at any time and enjoy the cultivation resources provided by the country. The earlier you reach the standard, the earlier you can start practicing martial arts. But if you haven't met the standards by the end of the semester, you can only self-cultivate or simply give up martial arts. The improvement of qi and blood is not easy. Adults who have not practiced before have an average qi and blood of 1.0. It is not easy for a child aged 15 or 16 to achieve twice the life and vitality of an adult in just 1 semester. It has been 3 months since the start of school, and there are only 2 months left until the end of the semester. And in my midterm test a week ago, my Qi and HP were only 1.51. Even if we keep up with this progress, it won't be enough time, let alone the growth of Qi and blood getting harder and harder later on. In this situation, even if Chen Fangua favors his son too much, it is difficult to ignore objective facts. Sure enough, in a slightly dull atmosphere, Chen Fangua pondered and spoke up. Your homeroom teacher told me that with over 1,000 students in the school, your Qi and HP can only rank 649. This score is not bad, but it's still very difficult to enter the martial arts class. I heard that only 276 people met the standard last year, and apart from those who have connections, this number is even lower. As Chen Fengwa's words fell, the atmosphere on the dining table became even more dull. Even Chen Wei, who had always been noisy, remained silent and focused on serving food and cooking. Seeing this, it seemed like he was taking care of his son's self-esteem. Chen Fangwa coughed lightly and said, however, Jin, your academic performance is still very good, especially in mathematics and physics, both of which are in the top 30 of the grade. Speaking, I didn't forget to peek at Chen Jin's face. Seeing Chen Fangwa, who had always been serious, carefully observing himself at this moment, Chen Jin couldn't help but laugh. Dad, if you have anything to say, just let me know. I know my grades very well myself. Okay, Chen Fangwa nodded, then I'll be frank. Based on your current progress, if you still want to enter the martial arts class, you need to purchase spiritual medicine as soon as possible to assist. However, the spiritual medicine that can increase qi and blood is not cheap, and the lowest level one costs tens of thousands. For our family, it is a considerable expense. Of course, my parents are not reluctant to part with this money. As long as Jin is determined to learn martial arts, our family has still accumulated some savings over the years, and we will definitely support it with all our strength. What others can give us, our family cannot fall behind either. Just. Jin, you need to figure it out for yourself. Practicing martial arts doesn't necessarily mean it's a better way out. People your age may not have a complete understanding of martial arts, so Dad still has something to discuss with you. Listening to Chen Fangwa's words, Chen Jin silently lowered his head, his heart full of mixed flavors, and his nose inexplicably sour. Having the memory of the original owner, he does not reject his parents in this lifetime, and his interactions with his sister are also very natural. Just after all, I feel a bit uncomfortable in my heart. But at this moment, I feel the deep love for myself in Chen Fangwa's words, and the slightest barrier quietly dissipates. Strange face, but the same love. They are their own parents. As sure as fate. Taking a deep breath, Chen Jin looked up and whispered, Dad, you can talk, I'm listening. I just want to talk to you about my experience over the years. Chen Fangwa cleared his throat. Look at your father and me. Although we barely entered the martial arts class back then, we were also eye-catching in school. However, now we can only work as a factory security guard with a monthly salary of less than 10,000 yuan. Many classmates in the same class, without practicing martial arts, earn 10 or 100 times your father's income. Nowadays, novels and comics portray warriors in such a brilliant and eye-catching way that they seem to be elevated to the status of superior human beings. However, in reality, warriors are not as glamorous. The vast majority of warriors will soon encounter bottlenecks due to a lack of subsequent cultivation resources. A little better, can join an exploration team or become a school teacher. Poor, can only do some hard work, tiring work. There are also those who don't accept their fate, go to dangerous places to pursue opportunities, and die in the wilderness at a young age. And those who don't study martial arts can't practice martial arts in their lifetime. Of course not. They may even have an advantage. Your second uncle, his body was so weak back then, and his martial arts grades were at the bottom of his grade. But now, as a senior technical worker in a state-owned enterprise, he earns an annual salary of 300,000 yuan at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. 5 years ago, he underwent genetic modification, and now his father is no match for one hand. Dad said these things not to make you give up on martial arts, but to make you think clearly that cultural courses are your advantage. At this stage, taking the path of humanities may not necessarily lead to low martial arts achievements in the future. Of course, the final decision is still up to you. As long as it is a decision made after careful consideration by Jin, Dad will definitely support it unconditionally. Chen Fangwa said a lot in one breath, which made Chen Jin feel a bit confused for a moment. Chen Fangwa is right. Everyone wants to master extraordinary power and stand on the cloud top of 10,000 people. However, reality is cruel. Many young people who dream of achieving great success and extraordinary accomplishments plunge into the martial arts world, thinking they can explore new horizons. Only when they look back do they realize that they are just an ordinary member of the crowd. In fact, if everyone pursues transcendence and ideals, then society cannot function. The truth of this world is that the vast majority of people are destined to spend their entire lives working at the bottom, dedicating themselves diligently in serving as fuel for the gifted and high. Ranking. Give them the opportunity to rush towards a broader sky. The country will not tell you this cruel truth directly, but through layers of selection, you will recognize it. Which person was not spirited and ambitious when they were young? But ultimately, teenagers will compromise with reality. If Chen Jin had no golden fingers, with his personality, he would have started from reality and made rational decisions, rather than relying on wishful thinking and blindly embarking on the path of martial arts. But now, he has this confidence. Taking a deep breath, Chen Jin stared at Chen Fangguo with both eyes and said word by word. Dad, I want to learn martial arts. Chapter 7. Trust. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Fangguo's hand picking vegetables trembled slightly. Immediately, a flash of light flashed in his eyes and he loudly said, "Okay. You have this determination, and my parents will definitely support you." As he spoke, he turned to look at Li Ping and coughed lightly. "Tomorrow, transfer the money to Fang Ji and tell him that I want the Peiyuan-Dan. Peiyuan-Dan. Chen Jin's heart skipped a beat and he blurted out, "Isn't that pill faster than 100000? Your second uncle has some connections, you can get one as long as 78,000 yuan. Chen Fangguo rubbed his brow and said, "Since Ah Jin is determined to take the path of martial arts, you must replenish your qi and blood as soon as possible. This money cannot be saved." Chen Jin didn't speak, but his mind was running rapidly. Peiyuan-Dan is indeed a very effective pill for enhancing qi and blood. Generally, people can increase qi and blood by at least 0.1 when taking it. However, for Chen Jin, he has a more cost-effective solution. Chen Fangguo thought Chen Jin was worried about money when he saw him not speaking, and said, "You don't have to worry about money. After all these years, your parents still have some savings." "I didn't mean that." Chen Jin scratched his head and tentatively said, "I mean, why don't you just give me the money for buying Peiyuan-Dan, Dad? Let me handle it myself. Give you the money directly." Chen Fangguo was surprised. "Yes," Chen Jin nodded and thought of an excuse, "I know my own body the best. Let me focus on strengthening it, maybe it will be more effective." Chen Fangguo hesitated for a while before saying, "Ah Jin, it's not that Dad doesn't trust you, it's just. You're still young and don't have a comprehensive understanding of some things. I'm worried that you might be misled by some information online. Your second uncle is a staff member of Phoenix Pharmaceutical, and he is professional in this field. The pills he purchased are definitely authentic. He is not worried about Chen Jin spending money recklessly. His own son, who has grown up, trusts Chen Jin's character very much. What he is worried about is son was deceived. In the current prosperous era of martial arts, various martial arts schools and training institutions emerge one after another, with countless health supplements and unique martial arts techniques, leaving people dazzled, including fraudsters who fish in troubled waters. Before the revival of spiritual energy, there were a large number of deceitful and notorious individuals claiming to spread martial arts and marketing various health products targeting health anxiety. However, in the current era of booming martial arts, such individuals are naturally becoming more rampant. The country will naturally crack down on those false marketing methods that are too obvious and inferior, but many companies and groups do not engage in fraud, only hype. Perhaps a 500 yuan pill, after marketing, packaging, and so-called improvements, with a few celebrity endorsements, has only increased its effectiveness by 1/20%, but the price can increase tenfold. You cannot say that he is engaged in false business, because what he sells is not fake, it is indeed effective, but the cost-effectiveness is too poor. Many people who don't know where to go will spend money in vain. This is commonly known as the intelligence tax. That's what Chen Fangguo is worried about. However, Chen Jin's attitude was very firm. "Dad, believe me this time." Looking at his son's confident gaze, Chen Fangua hesitated. He didn't believe that Chen Jin could have a better way, but he didn't want to appear untrustworthy of him. After hesitating for a long time, Chen Fangua said, "Okay, Jin, you can spend it yourself. However, I have a requirement that you keep a record of every expense, show it to me regularly, and let me check it for you." Chen Fangua's request is very reasonable, that is, if a startup company takes money from investors, it needs to report it regularly. However, this made Chen Jin difficult because he took the money to explore the vast world. How could he tell his parents? He has sworn that even if he dies, he will not tell anyone the secret of being able to travel through the wilderness. After a moment of contemplation, Chen Jin looked up and smiled, "Dad, I know you're worried about me, but you're already tired from work. Don't worry about these small things. If you're really worried, why don't you just look at the results? How about this? You give me 10,000 yuan first. If I can increase my qi and blood to 1.75 within a month, you can give me more money." Faced with Chen Jin's proposal, Chen Fangua fell into contemplation. Chen Jin's qi and blood were 1.51 a week ago. If he could improve to 1.75 within a month, with his qualifications, his progress rate could indeed be described as rapid. Even taking Peiyuan Dan may not have such a good effect. Just, Chen Jin can do it for only 10,000 yuan. Chen Fangua is a bit skeptical. Don't say 10,000, even 100,000 is enough. However, when his son has already talked about this matter, if he refuses again, it seems a bit too distrustful of him. On second thought, since it's only around 10,000 yuan, since Chen Jin is so confident, let him give it a try. Even if it fails, just give it a lesson. Thinking of this, Chen Fangua no longer hesitated and said, "Let your mother give you your bank card later, and you can go and withdraw 10,000 yuan yourself." "Thank you, Dad." Chen Jin was somewhat moved. He was afraid that Chen Fangua would not be at ease, so he added, "Dad, don't worry, I have confidence in getting into the martial arts class." Chen Fangua's face showed a hint of smile. "Dad naturally believes in you. Even if you don't pass the exam, it's okay. Just accumulate experience. If Xiao Wei wants to learn martial arts in high school in the future, you can still give some guidance." Chen Jin felt warm in his heart, knowing that his father didn't want to put too much pressure on him. At this moment, Li Ping also brought her bank card and said, "The password is 145278. Jin, you can watch and withdraw more." "Thank you, Mom." Chen Wei, standing beside her, saw that her parents had actually brought her bank card. Her eyes lit up and she sweetly exclaimed, "Dad. I also want to study hard. Can you give me some money too?" Chen Fangua glanced at her and said, "What do you want money for? Is your monthly living expenses not enough?" Chen Wei rubbed her hands and said, "I'm going to buy study materials. It's much cheaper than my brother's. It's not 10,000 yuan, it's only 648 yuan. Oh my." Before he could finish speaking, he was slapped with resentment by Chen Fangua. "Give me less time to play your damn game. Brother. Do you think parents are biased?" On the street, Chen Wei angrily complained to Chen Jin. "Why would I just give you my bank card if I say I give it to you? I can't even give you a small amount of money. It's like guarding against thieves. They just have prejudice against me." Listening to Chen Wei muttering angrily in her ear, Chen Jin chuckled in silence and said, If you work a little harder in your daily life, you won't be so unconvincing. Do you know I didn't study hard again?" Chen Wei rolled her eyes. "Mathematics is too difficult. Is that something for people to learn? Is it difficult?" "I think it's quite simple," Chen Jin said with a relaxed smile. "Pooh. Chen Jin. Don't be too arrogant. When I enter high school and show amazing martial arts talent, you will know what it means to have the talent of a king. A cook has the talent of a cook. As she spoke, Chen Wei still put on a disdainful attitude, tilted her head and tried to look down at Chen Jin as much as possible. She said in a very neutral tone, when the talented Wang Zhan of Weian reveals his talent, the world will tremble for it. You will regret your short-sightedness today. Chen Jin smiled faintly, ignoring the little girl's self-talk. He walked up to the ATM, inserted his bank card, and entered the password. Suddenly, a distinct number popped up. The little girl, who was no longer a sophomore, leaned over to take a look and exclaimed in surprise, "Wow! There's actually over 400,000. Dad and Mom are hiding it." Chen Jin was also a bit surprised. He went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, but considering that his father was at least a martial artist, he thought it was normal. Taking out a stack of red banknotes from the ATM, the little girl beside her stared straight. Chen Jin turned to look at this follower and found it quite amusing. He picked up the banknote and shook it in front of the little girl, laughing and saying, "Wang of Weian, do you want it?" The little girl's eyes lit up and she nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. "Yes. Yes." Chen Jin smiled and said, "What should I say?" "Brother." Chen Weila had a long-ending sound, her voice clear and cute. She held Chen Jin's hand and shook it back and forth, her big eyes flickering like a pitiful little dog. Chen Jin couldn't help but laugh and pulled out a red ticket. "Let's go play with it. By the way, don't tell your parents. If they ask, just say you've been with me tonight." "Aha." The little girl agreed without even thinking about it. She reached out to take the money and immediately smiled, sweetly shouting, "Thank you, brother. You're the best." He ran excitedly towards the entrance of the community, but halfway through, as if he remembered something, he suddenly turned around and compared his middle finger to Chen Jin, and then walked away satisfied. This guy. I really turned my face and didn't recognize anyone after receiving the money. Chen Jin shook his head and smiled helplessly. Watching the little girl disappear from sight, he took out his phone, opened the navigation, and located the shop where he had previously purchased insulation suits. Having taken away the troublesome follower, he can finally rest assured to do the right thing. Chen Jin walked quickly towards the location, and soon an imposing plaque appeared in front of him. Red Star Fire Equipment Store. Chapter 8. Key Customers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Red Star Fire Equipment Headquarters. The name is quite domineering, but in fact it is just a small shop, not much different from the ubiquitous hardware stores. When Chen Jin arrived, the boss was sitting on a small stool at the entrance of the store, leisurely rolling the yellow dog while smoking a cigarette. Seeing Chen Jin, his eyes showed surprise and he said, "Young man, why did you come back so quickly?" Chen Jin glanced at him and said leisurely, "Boss, the things in your store are not good. They burned me out in a moment." The boss was taken aback for a moment, then became anxious and said, "Young man, what did you do with my clothes? Did you burn them on fire? I told you before you bought them, this is a thermal suit. It's not a fireproof suit." "No," Chen Jin blinked innocently, "I just baked it from a long distance, and the surface of the clothes turned black and rolled up." "Impossible," the boss said decisively, "everything here has a specialized testing report. Don't be fooled by our small storefront, it's not a small company. We have branches all over the country and our own factories. We also have a research and development department that cooperates with Qiming Heavy Industry." "Do you know about Qiming Heavy Industry?" "It's a leading heavy industry group in China and even cooperates with the military." Chen Jin smiled and said, "Boss, don't worry, I'm not here to return the item." He didn't know if the insulation suit was good or not, but it was just a test of the boss's reaction. Seeing the reaction from the opposite side, Chen Jin felt relieved. The boss snorted and said, "So what are you doing here? What else can I do?" "Of course, I'm just buying things. Boss, do you have a more advanced insulation suit? As the words fell, the boss's face suddenly became strange. There are naturally more advanced insulation suits available. But young man, the one I'm selling you is already a second-level insulation suit. It can withstand temperatures up to 1,000 degrees Celsius without any problem. What did you do? Don't worry about this, boss, Chen said with a smile. The boss muttered in a low voice, but he didn't hesitate. He only had a thermal insulation suit on his left and right. What else can he do with it? Moreover, looking at Qingchengdao as a handsome young man, he doesn't seem like a bad person. Thinking of this, he introduced them to Qingchengdao. Their thermal insulation suits in the store are sold at level 4, with level 3 capable of withstanding 1400 Baidu and level 4 capable of withstanding 1800 Baidu, priced at 2000 and 6000 respectively. There are better ones, of course, but most of them require special materials, and some even add spiritual materials, which are basically specially customized. Qingchengdao stood still and pondered for a moment, saying, "How much does it cost to add a backpack?" 10% more, I'll give you an extra bottle of oxygen as a gift. Qingchengdao nodded in satisfaction. Last time he entered the wilderness, he found that the insulation inside was too stuffy and hot. Even if he could withstand gravity in high temperatures, it wouldn't be long before he could be suffocated. But with a backpack, you can fit an oxygen cylinder inside. If the oxygen content is sufficient, the cardiovascular capacity can also be greatly improved, and the ability to resist gravity will naturally be enhanced. I want a 3-level insulated suit with a backpack, Qingchengdao said briskly. Okay. The boss saw the order and had already put aside some of his previous unhappiness. He got up enthusiastically and went into the room to bring it to Qingchengdao. Wait a moment, Qingchengdao called out to the boss, there's no rush to get the insulation suit. I also need to order an insulation box and pick it up together when the time comes. Insulation box. The boss expressed confusion. It is a box made of flame-retardant materials, and then covered with an insulation blanket inside. It should be able to withstand high temperatures of up to 1000 degrees Celsius and can accommodate approximately one person. Isn't that a fireproof coffin? The boss blurted out. Are you special? Qingchengdao's face turned black in an instant. How can you talk? That's called an insulation box. Oh, yes, insulation box, the boss nodded perfunctorily and looked at Qingchengdao's strange gaze. I said, young man, why do you want this thing? Don't worry, Qingchengdao said nonchalantly. The boss shook his head and said, I don't have this thing. Qingchengdao remained silent and took out a stack of banknotes from his pocket. The boss's eyes lit up immediately and licked his lips, but still hesitated. Young man, no matter how much money you give me, I don't have it. Qingchengdao counted the bills and said, 100, 200, 300. 2000, is that enough? The boss remained silent, his eyes rolling around as if calculating something. Qingchengdao said again, these 2000 are just labor costs for you. The cost of the box is also included. You should have all the insulation materials for fire equipment. Find a few workers to assemble and process them, and you'll get the money. I just find it troublesome, otherwise I'll go find someone myself. After hearing Qingchengdao's words, although the boss still didn't speak, his raised eyebrows and eyes had already betrayed him. Pretending to cough lightly, the boss extended his palm and said, 5,000, it's a fixed price. 3,000, Qingchengdao said without even thinking. How about it? The boss shook his head, these materials and labor are expensive. Come on, the materials are already made. How much time can it take to pack a box? My money is not from a strong wind, 3,000. If not, I'll go somewhere else. This. The boss hesitated. Zhaoshuyuan.com he can only get a share from selling fire-fighting equipment, but this order is 100% profit for himself, and he doesn't have to pay taxes. It can be considered a good deal. Moreover, if he refuses Qingjin, the other party will definitely not buy a thermal insulation suit worth over 2,000 yuan from him. With this in mind, the boss apologized and said, "Little brother, let's add more." Qingjin sighed and said, "Then I'll add 500 more, but you can't cut corners for me. You need to use good flame-retardant materials, paint the outside with flame-retardant paint, and use national standards for the fireproof blanket inside. In addition, the strength of the box itself must also be sufficient. If I'm satisfied, I'll stick with you in the future. Maybe there's a big order for spiritual power materials for you." Qingjin drew a big cake. The boss's eyes lit up when he heard the 4 words, spiritual materials, and he agreed with one gulp, patting his chest to promise to do it absolutely well. He had already noticed that although the young man in front of him was dressed in ordinary clothes and had very strange requirements, he was definitely a big customer who didn't miss money. Finally, the two had another round of arguments and agreed to deliver a week later. By then, Qingjin's energy points should also be sufficient. So, all I have left to prepare for this week is one thing. That is to improve physical fitness as much as possible and strengthen cardiovascular and pulmonary abilities. Tomorrow is Monday, and Qingjin has decided to go for a 3-kilometer run every day after school in addition to basic cultivation. Speaking of going to school, Qingjin had a vague expectation in his heart. The school has specialized instruments for measuring qi and blood, and he is curious about how much his qi and blood have reached after the improvement of the chaotic world. Is it just an improvement in physical fitness, or is it accompanied by an increase in qi and blood? Chapter 9. Are you taking drugs? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, facing the rising sun, Qingjin stepped into his class. Almost everyone in the class is discussing cultivation. After the midterm test, the school gave a week off, and some people happily went on a trip to play, but more people spent time practicing in martial arts schools and even worked harder than when they were in school. Everyone is determined to soar to the sky at the beginning of the school year. There's no way, the appeal of extraordinary power to teenagers is too great, even game novels are far from comparable. Who would be willing to be extraordinary in reality on the internet? "Ah, Jean, how have you been this week?" Just as he sat down in his seat, a boy leaned in. This person's name is Li Junjie, and they are Qingjin's desk mate. They were classmates in junior high school, not to mention growing up wearing a pair of pants, they can also be considered knowledgeable. "It's okay, isn't it?" Qingjin casually said, his gaze habitually scanning a seat in the classroom, and suddenly said strangely, "Hey, where's Wei Tian? Why didn't he come?" Li Junjie smiled and said, "I knew your kid had been secretly following others. She wasn't absent, but she met her qi and blood standards and went to learn real martial arts." "So impressive," Qingjin exclaimed in amazement. "Yeah, she's the 5th one in our class, and it doesn't seem like her family can afford the elixir either. I think she has a good aptitude." Li Junjie's words were full of envy. He nudged Qingjin with his elbow and said with a wicked smile, "Why don't you tell him not to start earlier? Now he can't climb high anymore, right?" Faced with teasing from his friends, Qingjin just smiled and didn't respond. This girl named Wei Tian is indeed the object of her original crush, a very clean girl. The combination of always school uniform and small white shoes, without any accessories on the body, only a head of black and soft waist-length hair, rarely communicates with people, and every time I see it, it is a person sitting silently in their seat learning. The small melon seed face always has a serious and focused expression. Compared to the youthful exuberance of high school girls, this introverted and aloof temperament may have attracted their original selves. Moreover, in her original memory, this girl seemed to have some interest in herself as well. But everyone is wholeheartedly pursuing transcendence, not to mention confessing their true selves, but deliberately approaching them without any intention. Of course, in the eyes of Qingjin today, these are the pure, three major illusions of life. Ren Mei is simply focused on studying. After shaking his head and not paying any more attention, Chen Jin turned to talking about other topics. Quickly, the class bell rang, and this first class of school will test the qi and blood of all students. I haven't been anywhere this week. I've been practicing hard in the martial arts school every day, not even playing computer games much. My qi and blood should have increased by at least 0.05, right? Otherwise, I'm too sorry for my hard work. Li Junjie clenched his fist with anticipation in his eyes. He walked onto the testing bench, and the teacher attached the testing instrument to Li Junjie. Soon, a number appeared on the nearby monitor. 1.59 unexpectedly only added 0.03. Li Junjie widened his eyes and his face was filled with disappointment. It's normal for qi and blood to fluctuate, handsome. You don't need to worry, the teacher comforted and looked up, shouting, next. Li Junjie walked off the test bench in a daze, and Chen Jin comfortingly patted his shoulder before getting up and walking up. Li Junjie's experience is normal, as the growth of qi and blood becomes more difficult as he progresses to the later stage. Moreover, the human body is very complex and requires time to recover. The more he cultivates, the better the effect. This is also why talent and resources are so important. I don't know how much my qi and blood are. Chen Jin is also quite nervous. If the chaotic world can only improve physical fitness and cannot increase qi and blood, it is really hard to say whether he can enter the martial arts class in just 2 months. Taking a deep breath, Chen Jin sat on the test bench and soon the display screen bounced, revealing a number. 1.66, 1.66. Almost as soon as the numbers appeared, Li Junjie in the audience widened his eyes in surprise. If he remembers correctly, Chen Jin's qi and blood during the last midterm test was only 1.51, right? In just 1 week, it skyrocketed by 0.15. How could this be possible? Not to mention him, even Chen Jin himself was surprised by this data, but more importantly, he was excited. You know, he only stayed in the wilderness for 4 seconds now. Other classmates were also discussing, while the teacher looked at Chen Jin with surprise and smiled. It seems that Chen has been practicing very seriously this week. Not bad. Other students should also learn from him. Next one. When Chen Jin returned to his seat, the other classmates were still whispering. Although the test results are not disclosed, most people have a rough idea in their minds. Li Junjie, who knew Chen Jin's specific grades, immediately joined in. Ah Jin, you're on drugs. Li Junjie whispered, this is the only explanation he can think of. Chen Jin did not deny it, but nodded. Seeing this, Li Junjie's face improved a bit and he said, having increased so much qi and blood, it should be a big medicine worth over 100,000 yuan, right? Well, it's Peiyuan-10. That's great. Oh, if only my dad could buy it for me too. Li Junjie looked envious. In addition to envy, there is also an extremely complex emotion hidden in the words. There is not much difference in talent between him and Chen Jin, but since the beginning of the school year, he has always been holding Chen Jin down. Now being surpassed by Chen Jin, although the other person is his good friend, he still cannot describe what it feels like in his heart. Chen Jin saw his friend's disappointment and comforted him, isn't your family in business? You should also have a lot of savings, right? Just discuss it with your father. You don't understand, he's just an antique. Li Junjie shook his head bitterly. Every day, I say that my qualifications are average. Even if I enter the martial arts class, my future achievements will be limited. It's better to save the money to buy a house. Use this money to buy spiritual medicine. If you can't enter the innate world in the future, your status will not be much higher than that of ordinary people. If you don't have a house, you won't even be able to marry a wife. After hearing these words, Chen Jin didn't know what to say when looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. In fact, Li Junjie's family background is slightly better than his, the only difference is that his parents are more supportive of him. But then again, it's true that low-level warriors are not easy to deal with. For example, his father is still one step away from the innate realm, but this step is the difference between the heavenly sacks. A warrior who has not entered the innate world may still be much stronger than ordinary people, and it is not a problem to even have a few dozen enemies. However, in today's peaceful society, what is the use of having a strong body? I used to be able to go to the construction site to move bricks, but now the level of mechanization has increased, and even moving bricks cannot be carried by intelligent robots. If you don't want to join the army or join an exploration team as cannon fodder, even if you have all the strength, you can only be a security guard like Chen Jin's father. Get a monthly salary of over 9,000 yuan. This income and strength are seriously mismatched, but there is no other way. Under the trend of nationwide martial arts practice, there are too many martial artists. If you don't want to go to the battlefield, how can there be so many positions for low-level warriors? So Li Junjie's father cannot miscalculate, and it is even more reasonable. In the next few classes, Li Junjie was absent-minded and even listless during his quiet room practice. Compared to him, Chen Jin was constantly pleasantly surprised. His practice time for pile skills was extended, and during the practice class, he stood with one breath for 29 minutes, which was twice as fast as the beginning. This made Li Junjie even more envious, and he probably had to use Chen Jin's example to plead with his old father when he returned home. Chen Jin doesn't care about this, he just practices and runs on time every day, trying to improve his physical fitness as much as possible, and preparing for the next time he enters the wilderness. Time flew by like this, and a week passed quickly. The fireproof coffin customized by Chen Jin finally arrived at the time of delivery. Chapter 10. Entering the Wilderness Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Little brother, how about this insulation box? It uses genuine and high-quality materials. At the entrance of the Red Star fire equipment, the boss stood with his hands on his hips and a proud expression on his face. Although it's just a business deal, the feeling of personally polishing a product still fills the boss with a sense of achievement. Chen Jin looked at the box in front of him and was also quite satisfied. The innermost part is reinforced with steel wire to ensure structural strength. The main materials used are also of high-grade flame-retardant materials, combined with flame-retardant paint and insulation blankets in the middle. Theoretically, when placed in a 1,000-degree fire, it will not burn out in a short time. Chen Jin placed his hand on the insulation box and used his mind to communicate with Gu Jian. He wanted to teleport it, but soon received a reply from Gu Jian. The teleportation required 6 energy points, and with the insulation suit, it was 8 points. Chen Jin did not immediately teleport, but waited for another day, so that he not only had the energy points to teleport the fireproof coffin and insulation suit, but also enough points to teleport back. No way, the wallet is not wealthy, so we still need to save some places in the province. That afternoon, he skipped a class and, when there was no one at home, spent 100 yuan calling for a shopkeeper to help drag the insulation box back home and lock the door. Then, he took out the pre-purchased oxygen cylinder and began to inhale oxygen, quickly increasing the oxygen concentration in his blood, which could help him better resist gravity. 10 minutes later, everything was ready, and Chen Jin took a deep breath and began the teleportation. Detected pre-stored coordinates. Honghuang World. Consumption for this transfer. 38, transfer initiated. As the prompt appeared in front of him, the next moment, Chen Jin's eyes were no longer the warm bedroom. Still the desolate scenery, rocks cracked by the scorching heat, and fireballs scattered throughout the sky. He was wearing a thick insulation suit, but the fireproof coffin was not nearby, but Chen Jin could sense its presence. This feeling is very strange. It's like having an item compartment, where the insulation box is stored and can be grabbed at any time. A more objective explanation would be that the insulation box currently exists within the transmission channel constructed by Gujian and has not yet directly arrived in this world. As for why the thermal insulation suit appeared directly, it was determined by Chen Jin's own will. Without much hesitation, Chen Jin grabbed the insulation box and placed it on a slightly flat surface. With a soft bang, the insulation box appeared in mid-air and fell to the ground. At this moment, the green light on Chen Jin's body was rapidly fading, and he didn't waste time. With a flexible jump, he entered the box and lay down with his head tilted downwards. The insulation blanket in the insulation box was adjusted to a suitable angle by him in advance, including those that wrapped around the body and those that served as pillows, making it comfortable to lie inside. He skillfully closed the lid, as if he had practiced countless times before, and then, with his hands clasped together, he lay flat. 3 seconds later, the green light on his body quietly disappeared. In an instant, Chen Jin completely integrated into this world, and the surrounding air seemed to tighten in an instant. The temperature began to rise, and compared to the stuffy and suffocating airflow, what he first felt was the terrifying gravity of the vast world. Just like countless little people dragging his body downwards, the blood in his body seemed to be no longer blood, but replaced with asphalt. Chen Jin's heart rate rapidly increased, and his cardiovascular and pulmonary abilities were used to the extreme, pumping out blood that was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. However, compared to the previous time, the flat position finally made him feel much better. He was panting heavily, and fresh oxygen was sucked in from the oxygen cylinder, spreading through his lungs to the bloodstream, relieving the pressure on his brain. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Chen Jin's heartbeat is getting faster and his breathing is becoming more and more difficult. He can still barely bear it now, but it's like a 100-meter sprint with no end and no rest, which puts increasing pressure on his heart and lungs. The result was that Chen Jin's heart rate kept rising and soon surpassed 200. Dong! 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 He could hear his heart beating like a drum, his lungs burning like fire, and his chest bursting at any moment. And this is just a superficial phenomenon. Deeper in his body, every physiological activity, and even the movement between cells, is influenced by gravity. Just as he was about to reach his limit, a white light flashed in front of him. Pu Tong! Chen Jin knelt on the wooden floor of the bedroom, panting heavily and making hoarse, box-like exhalations. His eyes were blurry, his mind was buzzing incessantly, and the whole world was spinning. He lay on the ground, his face pale, panting like a dead fish. After at least 5 minutes, he finally regained his strength and felt that the dizziness in his mind had subsided quite a bit. At this point, his whole body was already soaked in sweat, sticky and extremely uncomfortable, and it seemed to be mixed with some unknown pitch-black substance, emitting bursts of foul odor. Is this the legendary poor defecation? Chen Jin smiled self-deprecatingly and struggled to get up from the ground. But not to mention, after his heart rate dropped, he did feel that his body was much more relaxed. Fresh air poured in from outside the window, and Chen Jin took a deep breath, as if he had been reborn. Detected fatal strike, this survival time is 21.4 seconds, Chen Jin widened his eyes in surprise. Zhaoshuyuan.com. How could I persist for so long? In the desolate world, at the beginning of the disappearance of the protective layer, he had some spare time to think about other things. In the end, just adjusting his breathing and maintaining a stable heart rate consumed all his mental energy, and the almost suffocating pain made him completely unaware of the passage of time. Even the fire-resistant coffin and insulation suit that were originally planned to be transported back had no intention of being taken care of. Although these two things can withstand high temperatures, they cannot withstand prolonged baking. By the time Chen Jin sees them again, they will probably have burned into a pile of coke. However, this is also good. Although the money was not saved, 8 energy points were saved. Qingchengdao still doesn't know if there are any other channels to supplement this energy point. If it can only rely on natural accumulation of 1 point every day, its value will be much higher than some money. Next time I enter the wilderness, I will need to customize a new insulation box and insulation suit. However, after this experience, I believe my qi and blood should have increased again, and reaching the agreed 1.75 with my parents will definitely not be a problem. Thinking of this, even Qingchengdao's calm face couldn't help but smile. The short 4-second pause before caused his qi and blood to skyrocket by a full 0.15. This time he stayed for more than 20 seconds, how much more will his life increase? He glanced outside and saw that the sun had not yet set. Qingchengdao suppressed his joy and took a shower to wash away all the dirt. Then, he eagerly put on his clothes and returned to school. The security guard thought he was a student who skipped class, although it was indeed the case. However, with Qingchengdao's skillful acting skills, he successfully fooled him by claiming to be sick and slipped into school. He didn't hesitate and headed straight to the cultivation room where qi and blood were measured. 3 minutes later, Qingchengdao looked at the numbers on the screen in front of him, and his face showed a look of ecstasy.